Yes, I think the clock should be correct.
All right, welcome to Villa Park City Council meeting for a special meeting for the budget workshop. So, Steve, would you please present the?
This is the first of our budget workshops. We run which fiscal year, which will begin July 1st and run through June 30th. So we are currently in the 25-26 year, and we will be moving into developing a budget with our plan to do a budget workshop this month, and we'll do one in May with updated information, and then we adopt the budget in June, at the end of June. And it's by law, so you know, by law, the city is required to adopt a balanced budget by June 30th each year. We've done that consistently, and there's no problem. Let me start by this is echoey. Let me just start by saying that the good news is we are well within our budget. We've underexpending our expenditures, our budget, and we are over-realizing revenue. So we're in a very good situation. The other question I have gotten, because there was just an article about Irvine having issues, Orange has issues, et cetera. We do not have a structural imbalance. We are balanced. We just did a 5-year projection, and we are well within our budget constraints, et cetera. So that doesn't mean we have enough money to do everything we want, but we are well within it. We have no structural problems. So what that means is operationally, our revenues will support our operations. That's as good. So you're not going to see us a problem there. I was very surprised to see one of our neighboring cities in Irvine this morning, an article about them having a deficit, Santa Ana, et cetera. So we're in a very good financial position, and I wanted to start off with that because that's the best question, the first question that most people say. Are we? There's no sense of urgency or worry for us. The format today, or this evening, we're going to talk about our year end, how we're doing this year, and I've already kind of stolen the show from Lee and told you that we're already within budget, but she'll go over some of the details. Then we're going to talk about the revenue assumptions and estimated financing for next year. It's important that we know and start with that because we have to balance our budget. So what our available financing is sort of drives what we can do each year. So, and then we'll talk about the expenditure issues, and that's where some of your input we'll get tonight, some over the course of the next month, and then some we get externally. So I've kind of marked that through. Then we'll talk about sort of pending issues that we still don't have a lot of information on, give summary, and if there's any direction from staff. So that is sort of the agenda for this evening, and this evening. We'll start with Lee going through the year-end projections, and then she'll move through the financing. Please keep in mind that these projections are our first shot at projections. It changes every month. You know, you get different bills, things come through, et cetera, and it gets clarified. So as the further you are in a year, the more accurate your projections are going to be, obviously, because you're closer to year end. With that, I'll let Lee kind of walk on.
Okay, good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. So this slide is to go over the
Push it away from you a little bit. There we go.
Yeah. Go over the year-end projection. And we'll start out with the revenue. Initially, we had budgeted for $6 million, and for our year-end projected to be 6.4 million, and which is 356,000 above the budget. And the main increase is in property taxes, charges of services, investment income, and there's a slight decrease in the sales tax than what we.
So you'll remember that, and I just add in here real quick, our philosophy is to under budget or be very conservative in our estimate of revenues and overestimate our expenditures. So with that, you always reach this length. So our goal is to be and have more revenue at the end than we had budget for, and underspend the budget numbers we have. So you can see that's exactly where we are right now, and there are reasons for each, but I think that's very consistent with our approach. So we would expect at the end of each year to be over budget, for instance, on property tax and things like that, so.
And the sales tax was lower.
Yes, sales tax, believe it or not, so this is sort of a misnomer. We get maybe 300,000, roughly 300,000 of sales tax revenue. So a 1% sales tax revenue that everyone talks about for other cities, would be meaningless for our city. We would not be able to fund anything, with the 1% increase. That wouldn't get us anywhere. We are extremely dependent upon our property tax. So that's where that's what drives our train.
Certainly would propose a tax increase.
Yes, but I mean, if 1% of, say, 300,000, if you get 300,000, you add 1%, that's not gonna balance anybody's
My
budget.
point was
Yeah.
do you think there's a reason why our sales were lower in the village?
We've had a few vacancies. It used to be the shopping center was 100% occupied. The property manager used to tell me they had 0 vacancy factor. Now we have vacancies in our buildings here, and you can see them. So that's probably one of the reasons, is we just have a slight dip there. And, as the economy changes, sales tax is gonna fluctuate with the economy.
Certainly never relied on the commercial sector for
Right.
funding.
Right.
No doubt about that.
Okay, thank you. On the expenditure side, okay, our original adopted budget was 7.1 million, and during the course of the fiscal year, we have a couple budget adjustments. So the final budget for the fiscal year is actually 7.2 million, and we have underspent a total of 1.8 million. That's the budget savings. And going into the salaries and benefits, and we have under budget by 84,000 roughly. And the non-op personnel operating expenses, we have a budget saving of $658,000, mainly such as a budget contingency that we budgeted for that we didn't have a need to use it, and some other contract services that we have based on the actual services performed and actual services that needed. And on the capital improvement projects, we have roughly $1 million under the budget. As you see, that $323,000, that is for our street improvement construction project, and that is gonna be carried over and rebudget for next year. And that construction currently right now is scheduled to be start probably in July or August, depending the award of the contract. And we have like $747,000, that is a sewer improvement project fund, and that is gonna be carried over to the next fiscal year. For the trail improvement project, we have completed $45,000 worth of improvement, and the city may request additional appropriation before the end of the year for any additional needed.
So every year, as you recall, the trails are DG, or decomposed granite, and they basically, when you get the rains and things, they get worn out, and you start to get ravines and things like that in them. So we have to repair them. We're doing a little bit of extra repair right now based on Santiago, where we are going to have the race soon, and the spectators will be standing. So some of those areas we're trying to get a little extra, and some are just natural wear and tear that happen.
All right, thank you.
Are we allowed to ask questions as we go along?
Yeah.
So I know, same question as I had last year, mostly for people if they're watching. So you immediately, if you're from the private sector or even your own family room budgeting, you say, okay, revenue of 6 million and expenditures of 7.2. Wait a minute, we're upside down, $1.2 million. But the way you explained it to me last year, and just so that everyone knows, it's because that is our revenue, and the expenditures actually have a lot of carryover from previous years.
Right, so you'll see that the revenue, the fund balance that carries forward. So if we didn't spend $750,000 on sewer, that money is still there. It didn't go away. It just gets carried forward to the following year. So your unspent fund balance carries forward.
So it's almost like we should say revenue plus surplus is X, and then here's what our expenditures are expected to be.
you
And then
also-
you would see us being very healthy.
Yeah. You also have reserves on top of that. So we have another 2.5 million of reserves that are untouched. So we'll go through that a little later on today. So yeah, it's the sort of the little nuances of government budgeting, kind of the way it works. But money received never goes away. It sits there. It has to be used at some point, and it can't be, given for other, a lot of it's designated for certain things, like sewers. We have to spend that money in sewers. That's the sewer special assessment everyone has. that on their property tax bill that you see, that money is designated by law for sewers. So we don't get to say, well, let's go pay for the sheriff and do an enhanced sheriff with that. They're locked in. So some of these are very specifically designated. So this is lump sum. We're dealing at very high macro level when we talk about this too.
I just want everyone at home to understand that we're not upside down 1.2, that
We
yes,
are-
our revenue is 6 million plus what we collected the previous years, and our expenditures are expected to be 7.2.
Right.
We have more than we're spending.
So our fund balance is significant. Let me just say the unspent monies are significant every year. And those just keep carrying forward.
Thank you. Okay, the next slides, we're gonna go moving forward to the next fiscal year for 26-27. We're gonna walk through a couple revenue assumptions that was gonna build up for the next budget cycle. And the first part is we're gonna go through is the discretionary revenue. Highlights mainly is our general fund money. And as you're aware that our property taxes is the major source of revenue. It comprises 60% of our total funding. And the county estimates for a 3.5% increase, but we do it conservatively by estimating 3% increase, and that would increase of $110,000 in property taxes.
That's what we're counting on. We're probably gonna realize like 150,000, but if we only budget 110,000, we're safe. I always feel comfortable that way.
And the next part, as we mentioned about the sales tax, so as Steve mentioned, like we have a sales tax consultant service, for they estimate that our sales tax revenue will be projected at 304, depending again on the economy, how that goes like for this coming year. And for the passport services processing fees, it remain constant around 7,000, depends on the needs of our residents and citizens. And the tax fee remain constant at 15,000, but that is based on the permit fees that we receive. Okay. And this next slide is about the restricted revenue from our other local agencies. So the first one is what we have, Steve mentioned about, is an annual sewer assessment fee. We get roughly $407,000, and we will have a fund balance available for $3.2 million available. And we also get the from OCTA, which is the half cent sales tax that is restricted for street and transportation purposes. That is $121,000, just a slight decrease of like a 2%. That is what they're projected based on the sales tax receipt. And for us, we also receive from the state, which is a gas tax, as well as the SB1 money, and that is estimated at $342,000, and that is a 4% increase from last year, and that is restricted for street improvement purposes. We also receive a roughly $7,000 in AQMD fund. That is gonna give us $35,000 available, and that is gonna be carried over for the next fiscal year when we need to spend it for the.
So for AQMD monies, those are Air Quality Management District, for those acronyms and government that throws out. But basically, we get $7,000 a year, $35,000. We bought our electric vehicles in the back with those money. So $35,000 won't buy us a vehicle, but we continue to accumulate it. And as we need to replace our vehicles, we just use this money, and there we go. We do have a mandate that they have to be fuel efficient vehicles. So at some point, we're gonna have 3 vehicles that are not fuel efficient, but we'll get them there. But it avoids having to spend any money from the general fund as we sort of prorate the schedule of replacement. So it's been very effective so far, and it's been a pretty much a help to our general fund.
Okay, and the next one, we also receive $15,000. That is like for the PAC fee. It's a public educational government access funding. It's a 1% of the franchise fees that collected by the cable company.
So that money is spent, this is the screens, we did this during the COVID years when they shut down everything. Perfect time to redo the wiring and all that, so we hardwired everything and put in all these large screens. If you remember, we had the old pull-down screen here a few years ago behind the mayor's seat, and we had to have a pole that you pulled it down, et cetera. So we've automated. The 88,000, our plan here is these cameras we'd never replace. These are the original cameras that were put in years ago. So those will be the next thing that we'll probably start to replace. And so it's a technology fee basically for public education. So we'll do that. We also use those monies to help upgrade our website. When we used when we upgraded with the emergency management, those are the monies we paid to help get that taken care of.
Thank you, Steve. All right, the city also received $75,000 in award from the SB 1383 grant. That is the Edible Food Recovery Program. There is a expiration date on this grant money, and that is like extended, and it's gonna expire at the beginning of November. We have 56 out of the 75,000. We have $56,000 left to be spent.
So we're using some of the cow recycle for the compost that we have. So we have purchased compost, and then we have to do a certain compost amount each year. So we buy that and pay that, and that goes to credit to against this money. So that's sort of how we fund that again, without having it hit the general fund. We comply with state mandate.
So where it says expiring, is it a use it or lose it?
Yes.
Well, we'll lose, yes.
Yes.
Unspent monies will not get returned to us.
Okay.
If we do.
We'll
like
do an
the-
extra composting type of thing is what we're gonna do. Is another.
Are we gonna spend that much money between now and then?
Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the demand. And we also need to work with our haulers.
Yeah, the hauler type.
Could it be,
Anything-
go ahead.
You were in the middle.
No.
Please.
Okay. Could we, like the Villa Park median, could it be used if we did Sarahscape, or we did something?
No,
that
unfortunately,
recycle
no,
It's a
that's-
material in the ground cover?
No, that wouldn't be, unfortunately. It's sort of restricted. It's a recycling thing type of thing that they're doing. So, no, that isn't. We do have a plan for that. So the median is something that I've talked to several of you about. We have some plans on that and rebuilding that. So we can use, for instance, some of the sewer improvement monies, the 3.2 million. We have money from the hauler that has, the Mayberry hauler. We have 42,000 there. We have potentially, Serrano has indicated that if it's sustainability water type of things, that they can help fund that kind of stuff. So, if we put in stuff that's low key. So, and I don't know if you noticed it, but we had a Mercedes take out 2 of the planters on, and pushed one all the way across the street. It was pretty amazing how they did it. But we had those, on the one end were taken out this weekend. So unfortunately, that's sort of the reality we have there is since I've been here, we've probably had 5 accidents where it's either taken out signage or the planters or whatever, and if you know those planters, they can't be lifted, but they're 700-800 pounds. They have to be lifted with a crane. So for a car to push one all the way across the street, that's a kind of a hit. I was impressed because the car was drivable afterwards, so I don't know.
I was gonna ask, is there anything else besides compost that we can use that money for?
It's not so much. It's kind of restricted. You can use it for recycling efforts or things like that, if you put recycling bins or things like that around. But there's not a lot. I mean, we're not in a situation, a lot of corporate, or businesses and use it for that kind of thing, but, recycling and stuff like that, but we don't really have, we've looked and explored a lot of different things, but there's just not a lot. We've used some when we had to do the consultant we used to help look at our rates. We use some of that monies and things. So we try and be use that money as useful as possible, but it's kind of restricted. It's pretty restrictive. If we own parks, it'd be great because we could
Right.
fix parks up and do things like that, but we don't have that. The Knolls is relatively new and they're water efficient and things like that we already have there.
That's what I
So,
was wondering, so you couldn't do something kind of in conjunction with like Serrano Water District where you had a whole bunch of drought tolerant plants that you could use that money to purchase and ask the residents if they wanted to?
it has to be for public projects and specifically. You can't go toward individual property residences.
Got it.
Which the compost is a generic, big type of thing, you could do that, but that's sort of where we can draw the line. It's very restrictive, and it's the 1383 is sort of problematic. Some of the cities are using that money for enforcement. They go around and, enforce recycling efforts within the city. And they fine people or give tickets and things I'm not into that, so I'm not going to fine people or whatever if they don't use their, I know one city that will actually fine residences. And I live in that city. We got a notice that we did put something wrong in our trash can. But anyway, that is unfortunately that some of the things they're using it for, which it's not really something I think would go well in Villa Park.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so with that said, we're gonna project that roughly about $300,000 increase from last year's revenue for the upcoming fiscal year.
So this gets to your question about how we look so solvent. If you look at it, our expenses are $7 million, but we have 9.8 sitting there, right? So you realize carry forward, there's a lot there. So we're in good financial shape. That sort of answers your question, I think.
Okay, so this is a big picture. I know there's a lot of number here. So we start out with the first line item. That is the fund balance that is per our audited financial statements from the last fiscal year. As you see, we have a $8.9 million balance that is carried over from previous years. And plus that we have this year, which is a projected revenue for the current fiscal year, is $6.4 million. So we have in our governmental accounting, we have something, as you know, we have different funds, like general funds, sewer funds. So therefore, we also have called the internal fund transfers. They just you will see one fund will get a transfers in, the other one will be transfers out. So it's a net effect is zero. And the projected expenditures for the current fiscal year for both operating and the capital projects is $5.4 million. And there is a net increase of $1 million for this current fiscal year. And that added to the fund balance, so you will have $9.9 million ending fund balance for this fiscal year, June 30th, 2026. And for the upcoming budget cycle, the budgeted revenue for 26-27, 6.3. We have a little interfund transfers of $20,000. Budgeted operating expenditures, $5.8 million. And the capital improvement projects is $2 million. And some of that, roughly $1 million, is transfers carry over from last fiscal year. That is a net decrease of $1.5 million. And the fund balance estimating for June 30th, 2027 is 8.4. And just kind of readdress some of the comments earlier. The city does not have any kind of a long-term debt or bond issuance. Therefore, our capital project expenditures, it's kind of we accumulate the funds, and so that we can spend a one-time big project to fix some of the streets, and we do that every 2-3 years.
So we pay, basically, our capital projects are done on a cash basis. So the city, to my knowledge, has not done any borrowing since the incorporation. The only debt that the city owns is the pension obligation, and/or the health contribution for retirees. And that's, I want to say, we'll talk about that a little later, but we're very solidly funded there. So we don't have debt, we pay for cash. So that's one of the ways we stay very conservative, is that we adjust our capital projects based on what we have available. So we hit more streets or less streets, depending upon where we have the money and how that rolls forward. Always keeping a comfortable margin, because the price of asphalt goes up and down, et cetera. So we try and be very careful about how we do it, but that's sort of the way it works. And then keep in mind, we also have reserves. So we are cash flush. And I hate to say that, because every time you say that, the state comes and says, well, let's withhold this or let's do that. And so, but we are in a very good situation. So the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers, has they 30% your general fund reserves. We're at 50% of our operating budget in reserves, undesignated. That's an incredibly high number, and that was set by policy. We could be higher, but the council said, no, we don't want to just save money. We're going to do different things eventually. So we have a 50% reserve right now. So in other words, just think about that. we could get no revenue for 6 months and we wouldn't have to shut down or do anything different. There would be no problem for it. So we don't ever want to do that, but, and keep in mind though, that 2.6, when, you remember the Mesa Henderson, we had the flood channel break, that was $1.8 million. Now, we reimbursed about $1 million of that from federal FEMA monies and things like that. But that's the kind of magnitude, you need those reserves to be able to cover that, so we could make those fixes right away. But, you know, so we're in a very good situation. And I'll just jump in that, we'll talk a little bit more about reserves, but we also have the PARS contributions and the others reserves, we'll talk, we designate those and show those a little later. So in our reserves for pension, and so this question will come up, because I know that Councilman Frackleton brings it up. Our health is OPEB, it's, I don't know what it stands for.
Oh, it's other post-employment benefits.
That's health. Our obligation is under $10,000, the unfunded, after we had it. So we have, if you were to do that, so we're well, I mean, you know, we could pay that, whatever. Our pension obligation is 1.8 million roughly, and we have, I'm guessing what gross numbers, and we have about 1 million of it set aside, and in the annual that's unfunded liability. So we are like 80 to 85% higher than 80, close to 85% funded, which was eventually, we talked about by the end of 2028, 29, we'd be at like 90%, which was our sort of the metric we talked about last year, I think. So our goal is to incrementally increase every year. So we, even though we don't need to do that, these are restricted trusts, so we can't use, they're irrevocable trust. So once we put the money in there, it's locked in there. So no future council can take that $1 million and say, oh, let's do this, let's do that. It's locked. So that's where we are.
With the housing element, now that our housing element is approved, does this fund balance include the monies that were going to be freed up since we have an approved housing element now?
Well, we had monies for the contract to do the contractor, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, because we have other, I mean, there are things in the housing element we still have to do.
Okay.
And there are other issues with our general plan and updates and things along those lines.
So no, so it does not include that yet.
No, the monies, that will, but there is also monies that we were getting that were withheld from us because we didn't have a housing element, so the SB2 revenues were withheld from us, and those are monies that were used to help pay for our homeless contribution for the North Spa that we contributed every year, so that was withheld from us. We should be getting retroactively now reimbursed for some of that, so we should get an influx of money when and if the state catches up, and they're like 2 to 3 years behind. So no surprise, but when we get it, we've already paid that bill.
Right.
So we are one of the few cities that are completely paid up on our bill. So what will happen is we will get some money, but it's not here yet. And so the answer is yes, we have some money, but yes, we still have some things to do.
But it's not reflected here.
Not yet.
Okay.
We only count what we have in hand. I hate to count something that isn't here yet, because then, you know, if something happens, you know, and the state's dealing with the budget issues themselves, so as the state deals with it, typically the state uses the local jurisdictions as sort of how to help fund things, et cetera. They've taken in like the Mental Health Act at the county level, the you know, the funds at the property taxes and the shifts and things like that, so they deal with all that. So typically the state helps solve their problem on the backs of the local entities. So I really am very careful about what we count on and don't count on when we're getting something from the state, because you just don't know what they're gonna do. Okay, now we're kind of moving, the next item is where we are kind of, our expenditure side of things. So we know where the revenue sides are. The housing element, we have 75,000 remaining in our contract. We have a couple of issues there that we have to deal with. One of those issues is we have to update our ADU ordinance. We have to do things that they, you know, there's like, every year there's new ordinances and things like that. We are supposed to be in compliant with them. We have to do potentially an RFP to say that somebody's gonna develop something, but, you know, whether that materializes or not, we have to, you know, and if we don't do those things, we won't get penalized in the 7th cycle. So we need to keep doing that we said we would do. So anyway, we have the 75,000, so it shouldn't cost us any more than we already have budgeted. It's just following through on things we said we do. The local hazard master plan, I think hazard mitigation, we have 2,000. I think that should come to the council the final plan by early spring. I guess mid-spring by this point, because we're in early spring. But it's about done. I've seen the draft, but they're just finalizing it, and they're running it by the state to make sure it's compliant with state before we offer it to the council to say. So if they have any input or comments, we'll make sure we're in compliance. So that should be coming, so we'll have it definitely before June. It'll come. And that's a mandated update. The council priorities are kind of where we have the capital projects, the sewer maintenance, pump station improvement. What we have is we did a study, and I think I've shared it with you, any of your council that's interested. The only real issue that we have is potential, we did a capacity analysis, and we're in good shape on most all of ours. The only issue is there's a slope issue on Villa Park Road. In other words, the piping is not sloped enough, and it relies on gravity, and I'm not an engineer to know exactly how it works, but we have to adjust that. So that's going to be, we're right now, a multi-million-dollar project. That's going to involve tearing up Villa Park Road. When we tear up Villa Park Road, what we're able to do is we have to repair Villa Park Road. So when we repair it, we're going to be able to deal with the median at that time. So we have sort of the process, like I talked about, how do we do with the median? We have $45,000 from this hauling. We have a bond of $680,000 from the hauler to help deal with street repair that's wear and tear on there. We have, the foundation has said they would potentially bring up $70,000. So the median is probably $290,000, $300,000, somewhere in that range. I've also applied for an OCTA grant. We've applied for a federal grant with through Young Kim's office to hope that they can help us for a full $300,000. Now, I doubt we'll get all that money, but we're trying to patchwork a funding plan together to be able to bring it to the council and hopefully this summer get into the actual design and work being done there. In other words, if we're going to tear up Villa Park Road, we're going to tear it and fix it all up at the same time. I'm not going to fix the road and then turn back and come back and shut it down, because it's going to involve a lot of disruption of the traffic flow when we do it. So we've asked for a master plan. I want the consultant to tell us how, when and how it all should be staged and the timing, and give us a very good estimate of what the sloping will be required. The street rehab project is going to be budgeted, the 25-26 is going to be budgeted for next year. We should be going out to bid in the spring of May or June of this year, award the contract. We're kind of hoping we can do the projects during the summer, because you avoid rainy problems and you avoid school traffic. So that's always kind of been our goal, is to try and do work in the summer. Pavement maintenance, that would be, that's not the median para on Villa Park Road, that's the medians that we have throughout the city. And we have potholes and things like that. City Hall maintenance, you've seen there's some, we need to paint the building. We got estimates on the building and it was a little expensive. We've talked about redoing the concrete out front. We've got some estimates there. So we're going to be doing that this year. So that's going to be in there, and that's going to carry forward $20,000 from this year, and it will add to whatever we need when we get the bids. The DG, the trail improvement, we have to do a lot of work there. So there's 60 some odd thousand we talked about potentially asking for this year. There's another 75. Now, the problem is DG is just the fact that it has decomposed granite and it goes away. Good rains, and you're going to end up losing a lot of it. So it's sort of an annual project. There is a compactor and a kind of a glue mixture that they can put in there now that we started using, but we have a lot of trails in the city and we like to keep them up. So we want to do that. So that'll be one of our priorities with our next year. Council travel, we have 10,000, that's a continuation. Again, I think we spent 2,000 of it this year, so not very much, but you guys have money in there, so to the extent that we do, and hopefully, if it involves spending a couple $1,000s to get money from the feds for the median on Villa Park Road, I think it's well worth that investment. So that may be something we have to start thinking about. And to the extent that the state does tend to want to balance their budgets against the cities, and we need to have a presence up there with our, League of Cities, the association, et cetera, and to voice our opinion when they start doing the budget hearings and really get serious by June. So that may happen. Our law enforcement contract, this is really interesting. The next page, yeah, we go. The law enforcement contracts, it shows an $8,300 decrease from last year at this point based on their second estimate. This is the first time I've ever seen that. Now, what it involves is because they're truing up their overhead, which I've always complained about, and I think they were just tired of listening to me complain about it every year, because it's ridiculous. It was like, 60% overhead, which you should never, that's way high. So they've trued it up, and now we're there. Now, the one caveat is the county is negotiating with the labor unions. All right, for every 1%, there's another $17,000 that's gonna go against us. So if they give a 10% raise, that's a $170,000 increase we're gonna face. So if you guys have a voice with the supervisors, I would encourage you to speak up and say, remember the cities, because we don't get a vote in what they negotiate with the cities, but we get impacted because they just transfer the cost over to us. So that's a real, and every city's in the same boat, the contracts. And that's a real concern. So every 1% they give is gonna cost us $17,000. So that's just a sort of a metric if you have it in your head. That's a good one to carry. Animal control, we're right, I think there was a $600 increase from year to year. We're fine there. Code enforcement, these are just what the numbers we're spending and building official contracting on $159,000. We no longer we have fully paid off our contribution for the construction of the animal shelter. So that's paid off this year. That was $45,000 we paid over multiple years. Our insurance is going down. We have again, you almost hate to say some of these, we have a pretty good record except with pine cones hitting windshields. Although, interestingly enough, CJPIA denied that claim. So they said it was an act of God and doesn't get reimbursed. So we're fortunate, but our insurance premiums are dropping, so we're doing well. $7,000 for engineering, which is basically a CPI, 3% that we negotiate. Planning is a 0 increase we built into our contracts. We have some very favorable contracts. Plan check, we have 3 contracts, and we do the plan checks. It's $50,000 each, and we use them. We rotate them around: Malad, Sagecrest, and VCA. And they rotate them around so that we get good response times for plan check. Last year we had a decrease in election. This year it's going to cost us $15,000 because we didn't have an election last year, so that decrease has turned into an increase. So you'll see it says cost decrease and it flips over into an increase for the coming year. So this year it was absent in our budget. Next year it's in our budget. Automated fingerprint ID, that's the sheriff uses those, 2,300 there. Our IT support cost is $37,000. Our engineering, traffic engineering, we spend about $10,000. That's we budget it, but it's as needed. So for instance, when we had the James study, we did that was we used the engineer to deal with that. The Cal Recycle, there's $60,000 we'll spend, and we have $75,000, so we're probably gonna underspend that and may end up having to give $15,000 back. Pavement management program, we have 0 budget there because we're doing the street project, but we may end up having to do something because we just got told by OCTA that we have to increase our match by 28%, which is still under discussion. So that would be $113,000 that we might have to deal with, but that's sort of a pending issue. On-call surveying, you remember just recently we had a contract that we added, the grading and contracts, so we're adding $15,000 to the budget. JL Hunter, they are WQMP, the NPDS, and that's partially recovered fees, that's $42,000. Catch basin cleaning we're required to do, so we do 1/3 of the city every year, or 1/2 of the city every year. Yeah, it's annually. Okay, next page. And I'm going through fast. Some of these are just numbers we carry forward in the budget every year, but I'm trying to highlight some of the big issues we're dealing with that we deal with. Technology. We try and update our computers on a regular basis because technology is so fast. So for instance, we have a laptop that we gave Lee, but it doesn't connect to the internet anymore, so we have to upgrade it. So it's like 3 to 4 years old is an old laptop, unfortunately, with the technology and some of the stuff. So we did it, we increased the memory in several of them, and that helped a lot. But $10,000 this year is what's gonna cost us just to keep on top of the curve. Our annual subscription or budget is $24,000. Our permitting system is $14,000. We are also putting $5,000 in because as a council member, they get new cell phones, and if they want, they can have a laptop. So we have $5,000. If we don't use it, we don't use it, but we have to assume that we may need it. So Moving to salaries and employee benefits, we have an $8,000 increase in health insurance, which is very minimal, actually, when you think about it. Workers' comp is a decrease, again, because we have a very good record so far. Salaries, there's a $19,000 increase we're proposing, which is a 3% merit pool that I like to do, and I distribute it to the employees. 3% is that's a CPI close, it's actually lower than CPI at some point, but we'd like to be able to give something there. I think that's important that the employees continue to get some recognition and be able to at least keep up with CPI. CalPERS contribution rate. This is where we get our increase to the unfunded liability. So we have CalPERS adjust the rate that they charge us every year, and we're going up 15,000 there. We are again in very good shape. Classic rates, you can see, we no longer have classic employees. Everybody is a PEPRA employee at this point because Mike left us, retired. So everybody hired after 2013, which is all of us, are now in PEPRA. So that rate is considerably, so instead of paying for a 12.56 rate, we're paying at 7.93, considerably less, reduces our liability, et cetera. So we're funded, I said in the middle 80s, we're 83% funded, and that includes our 115 trust. So we're pushing our way up. That's 83% as of today. Next year it'll go up, and it continues to drive up. Okay. Our reserves and contingencies. Again, I mentioned we have a 50%, so we have just under 2.7 million. That policy is a council policy. You guys can change it if you want to. I wouldn't recommend it. I think it's great to have that. 50% is a very reasonable and a very solid. If we were going out for a bond rating, we would get the highest bond rating with that kind of reserves. And those are undesignated reserves. That's, if you need to use them for something, they're available. Right now, they're just invested. The Section 115 trust contributions, I think it's important that we continue to put money inside there. I think it's really important that we continue to drop $100,000 every year because that's going to increase our funding, unfunded actuarial liability. And the retirement that we mentioned we're at 5,000. I said 7,000, but we're at 5,000. So that health is pretty much mute at this point. There's nothing there. Our general fund contingency is 120,000. Now, 2 years ago, I used it. Remember, we had sewer problems in our building here. This year, we didn't use hardly anything. It's there. I think we used almost 70,000 for the sewer when we had all that stuff. We had to route it and repipe it, all that kind of stuff. So the 120,000 is there, and so we'll continue to budget it there at 120,000. Again, I'd like to be able to say at the end of the year, we haven't used it. If we do, it's there. It's for use. The last page is the stuff that's really sort of tricky, and this is one we're kind of dealing with. I've mentioned some of it before. The highway users tax, that's the Measure M, maintenance of effort. About a 28% increase, 113,000 that we just notified just today. That it could be 113,000 that we have to deal with. I don't understand that because if you look at every other city, we're on the very high side of an increase. 28% is way high. Some are single digit increases. So we're working with them, and we just sent an email back to them saying, what's going on here? We want to meet and talk about it. So we're not putting that number in the budget, but it's a pending issue that's out there. And what that means is we would have to put more money into the road projects or something we do for infrastructure. So out of the general fund. Our law enforcement, I mentioned it to you, and I'm going down the left column here. For every 1%, that's $17,000. You hear some outlandish increases being given by other cities. Some, 10, 15%. You can see where those numbers add up real quickly for us. That would be not desirable. I wouldn't want to see that, but that's what's out there. And those 17,000 is what the sheriff gave us as a number. So we know that's their estimate of what a 1% increase would be. So every 1% is going to add on top of that. This is something, the compliance element on the general plan and zoning. There's another element that I think we realized that our zoning code and our general plan are not in alignment. All right, there's a discrepancy math-wise. It doesn't work. So in other words, we have to bring those into alignment because one says 20,000 square feet, and the other one doesn't. So it doesn't jive. So we got to bring those into alignment, and that's a process we have to do in our zoning update. The homeless shelter, I mean, the delayed SB2 revenues, if they catch up, we could be for the good. I could come back and say, oh, we got another, I don't know how much we're paying, $30,000 a year now. So if we got, reimbursement, that's, helpful. A couple of years we've already paid. So there we go. Another issue that everyone's reading about and, what's AI going to do for us and whatnot. We've been approached by a company that is very interested in developing a program as a pilot program for cities to deal with planning review. So when somebody brings in a planning, you can submit it to planning and they can tell you if it's in compliance, meets all the codes, state codes and everything else. So, and I said, well, that's great to have, but how much is it gonna cost? They're interested in going 50-50, so for their cost and our cost, it would be $6,300. We're exploring that. I don't know if that's gonna work because I wanna make sure expectations are what they are. But if so, that could potentially speed up our planning review and reduce the cost of our planning staff. I hate to, but that would, and there's got to be an accuracy level and all those things we got to talk about metrics. So it's out there. That's why I say it's a pending issue, but there's a possibility. Now, what's important is that there is a city, and Ray told me that is right now is really far in the lead on this kind of thing, and they basically are replacing their planning staff. So if somebody submits something and it, planning permits approvals, it actually will come out and spit out something saying it's in compliance with all your municipal, state, and codes. And that would be very cool if you could do something like that. The other thing is it's limited, so it's controlled. This is not something where it's covering all of cities' operations. It's a very focused area, which I kind of like the idea if we're going to explore something. But AI is increasing, and you hear all these things, and I sort of said, well, what's AI? I'll be attending this thing at Cal State Fullerton where other cities are talking about it. So I'm going to gather some information and see what their cities, the question is reliability. That's sort of, you need accuracy levels that are really high. But there's a human issue too, is human have errors too. So, we're trying to figure that out, but that's sort of, I hate to be behind the curve. I want to be, we're small cities. We at least need to explore that kind of thing. So we'll see where that takes us. There's some fencing and trail repair that we have to do. There's some of our fencing, as you've seen, when you're out there putting on those banners, you see that there's some fencing we need to repair. I know Councilman McBride has talked about Valley Street crosswalk. So there's a cost to that, and we're trying to explore that and what it would take and how it would, the engineering and not just that, but the traffic flow and anything like that. So that's an issue that we'll add in. The storm drain improvement project, that's what I talked about on Villa Park Road. That's the big one there. That storm drain and the Villa Park Road project. Automated license plate readers. This will go to LEAC right now to give you sort of a thing. The Axon is estimating $47,000 for 18 cameras, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the number. Is that right?
19.
19 cameras. But it is 70 some odd thousand was the flock bid, so it's significantly less. However, and just so you know, the sheriff, I said, oh, we're thinking of going ahead, and Captain Timmons called me up and said, hey, you think about it because the sheriff's department is submitting a grant countywide for license plate readers. And if they do that, they'd be willing to put in some of those that are targeted for us. And I said, okay, if we go ahead and do that, will they pay us back? They will not supplant. In other words, if we go install them, that's our cost. If we wait for them, whatever. They are probably 3 to 6 months away from getting the grant. So we'll be talking to LEAC tomorrow night. That's one of the things, and we'll come back to the council. But potentially, they're not going to pay for all 19 cameras. They're going to pay for several of them, and that might be, for every camera that does, it reduces our cost. And that's what, about 2,000 to 3,000 per camera, somewhere in that, whatever.
Yeah, about 2,500 per camera.
So if they paid for 3 or 4 cameras, we're starting talking some numbers that make some sense, and that would be ongoing as opposed to, they wouldn't pay us for installation. It's ongoing.
And we were originally talking about trying to keep the budget more around $35,000.
So if we can get back to that, I think that
more
would
for less.
that would be really helpful. So that's one of the things that we'll see, and I really appreciate the sheriff even mentioning it, thinking about it, because they could have just said, oh, too bad, you put him in, we could have paid for him if you told us, but this is, Captain Timmons was aggressive and called me up and said, hey, think about doing that, guys. I'm right now, as a city manager, I'm saying, let's hold on it and let's see what we can do and what comes through. If I don't want to wait forever, but at the same time, it makes sense from a financial standpoint for us. The other thing is it would get us 19 cameras, and we could afford 19 cameras. So if you can spend less and get what you're hoping for originally, that's kind of a good deal. So I think that's what we'll see, and we'll see what LEAC weighs in on it. I'm inclined to think they're gonna say, yeah, they agree, but I'm throwing that out there because I'll bring it to council at some point here, and you guys will have to make your decision and what you feel is appropriate. But I think what I was trying to do is get a LEAC recommendation. I'm pretty safe bet that they'll say yes, wait, but, we'll see what they say tomorrow night.
So can I ask a question on that? So, will their recommendation be on our agenda for April?
Well, if their recommendation would be to wait, there's nothing to put on the agenda, right? Because the only reason to go forward, to put something on the agenda is if you're gonna buy them now, right? So I wouldn't go forward yet because I don't even know how much they'll pay for. So that's the issue. If I execute a contract, I've lost the possibility for the state, for the grant money.
So, and I'm very supportive of them, but I've had several residents reach out and say they're not, so I just want to be able to give them a fair update and
Sure.
let them know that when it's going to happen so they can come and voice their,
Right. I would suspect,
Could we maybe do an information item for the benefit of the residents on the Axon
Sure.
cameras? Because there are some differences, and so far to council, we have only had the presentation. We had like the 6 vendors that were presenting, but it did concentrate on Flock.
Right.
And there are some very material differences there,
that'd be great.
so.
we can put something on there, yeah,
That'd be
that's fine. That's a good idea. It's one of those things where I don't want it to be where the city makes a commitment and loses money as making a commitment.
No, absolutely.
Or even
But
the implied commitment that we're
but
doing
I think
something.
some people's concerns, might be quelled or satisfied based on the different technologies. So I think that's a great idea to put it on, and I can let them know.
So it's interesting, we're surrounded, most of the cities that are around us already have them. So we're the island here, this is where the benefit of being an island, because they're out there. They're already out there on many of our streets, not in our city, but, people coming and going can already be picked up elsewhere. So it's not within our city, but those 19 cameras aren't picked up. But, the other reality is, we said 19, and I don't think that was covering everybody extensively. That was just 19 that we thought were the highest priority.
Yeah, it was the major intersections, because several intersections being as they only cover 2 lanes going each way.
Right.
You need more coverage. So it wouldn't be 19 intersections, it's 19 cameras.
I think it's like 9 intersections, 9 intersections.
Yeah, I'll have to go back.
It's not,
to
8 or 9, it was
8 or
smaller,
9.
less than 10.
Yeah, because we did add meets.
Right, that was the very last one
Which
we
wasn't in
added.
their
Right.
original proposal, so.
So, and the other side of it is, if, depending on how gracious and how much money the county could get, we could end up adding intersections. If they got more money and we're trying to still target 35,000 and they bought 6 or 7, then guess what? Then we're all of a sudden saying, oh gosh, we're under 35, maybe we can, so we can play around with it a little bit, and I think there's some flexibility. Anyway, so
Steve.
go ahead.
With this Flux camera, whenever we approve it, or not approve it, but let's just say approve it, with this money coming out of the general fund that you have put 120,000 annually?
No, it's not part of the 120,000 is a reserve. So it would come out of fund balance probably, or if it's grant money, that's sort of where it would come from. It would be general fund though, strictly general fund. And there's a difference, there's also differences in ownership, as I recall, of data. We've had this conversation with the data. So it's an evolving process. And it seems like every time you talk to somebody, the needle is moving on this stuff. So it's interesting, several cities are stepping away, are withdrawing some of theirs. So it's kind of interesting that, it was the thing of the time. And I think now you're seeing people saying, I know like Stanton and some of those are saying, we need to back off, we have too many, and the return isn't there for them that they were hoping for. So, you know, I mean, it's an evolving process, like it is with most technology. You're gonna see technology improve and this or that or whatever. So our goal is to get you some updated revenue and expenditure projections on May 4th, which is just about a month from now. We should have information. I hope like the sheriff's contract and those things will be negotiated. And then we'll summarize that and put it into our budget to adopt it on June 23rd. Typically, what you're gonna see on May 4th is our best and final estimate, if you will, because we won't, then we gotta do all the narratives and all the charts and all things like that, and get that all up to speed. So that's what happens, is we try and give you our best final estimate in May. So that's what you're gonna see. Right now, you're seeing our first, and some of these are 6-month estimates, some of them are 8 months, we heard just like today on OCTA. So hopefully some of that stuff gets resolved. Anyway, that's where we are, and again, I want to reiterate, structurally, we still have fund balance and reserves in year 5. So we do a 5-year, and anything after 5 years in projections is kind of speculative because you're making a bunch of assumptions, and those can go a lot of different ways. But for purposes of when you see cities saying they got a structural problem, they're looking out in 5 years, they've got a problem. Most of them say, on 3 years, we got this or that, or we got it now. We are very solid in 5 years, very much like we are right now. So I think that's the message that people walk away with at our budget, is that Villa Park has remained conservative in their estimates and we don't overspend. And I don't want to say that any other city's overspending, but, you know, we have not relied on monies that, you know, like we didn't use the COVID monies to expand our services to the residents. We used it for one-time expenditures and things that were fine. And now we didn't buy into other things. Probably our biggest risk is if something happens to property tax. But we're budgeting 3%, and I'm hoping the properties in Villa Park continue to grow and develop, and I think that makes a big difference for us. So we are so dependent. A lot of cities have sales tax that they're just totally dependent on. That's why you see the big boxes and, you know, those things going in.
Just a quick question. Comparably speaking, how does Villa Park and our permits fee structure, how does that compare to cities like, you know, maybe not necessarily huge, large cities, but moderate size?
Well, the building permits, by state law, you can't make money. You have to make them whatever your costs are. So we did a cost study and implemented it just this year. So we just did it last year. So I mean, in one way, you want to make sure that your rates are as competitive, but at the same time, whatever it costs to process, and that's what we charge them. So in other words, if it's cheaper to build in Orange, it's going to be cheaper in Orange because they're not, or it's more expensive in Orange. I mean, it's like, it's not really apples to apples because you can't necessarily build a Villa Park home in Orange, you know, and vice versa. So it is kind of very different. So we do a cost study on it. So I would say that we're competitive as far as we are very quick. Our responses on plan check, our first responses are always 30 days, which is very good. We do some things on like building inspection. You can call in that morning and still get an inspection that day, which is unheard of in most areas. So we provide pretty good service for that because we rely on property tax. So we want to make sure.
We want to make sure
We want to make sure that that's why we have 3 different plan check companies, so we can parcel it out and get it back quick.
Right.
That's our goal.
You've also indicated a hope that the AI might bring these costs down too.
That would be our hope, and, you know, it's an accuracy, it's a reliability issue, and, you know, then, you know, I mean, there are some issues with AI as you read them in the paper every day. So, I mean, I look at that, and my son was telling me that they have AI now that is they use in schools now, that there's one program that can literally take a class for you if you wanted to. But I said, well, you're going to get an A in the class, or are you going to just do, you know? So, AI is advancing very, very quickly, and the reliability is going to be a question in what it does. There's always this, you know, we have very different sets of codes, so it's got to be custom made when you do, you know, our codes don't match every other cities.
I can tell you in the construction industry that we're being revolutionized because all our takeoffs now are all moving towards AI. And then they get just double checked quickly, and it's
Well, that's, if we can do that, that's what I'm saying. The planning is like this area that's defined, and you can measure it, and you can see it, and you can control it. Like, I wouldn't want AI to be developing our budget. I mean, those kinds of things. I wouldn't want AI to control our investments. I wouldn't want AI to do certain, our building inspections or things. There's things that I wouldn't want to do, but I think we have the ability to do some things, and that's where we're going to kind of explore and see what we can come up with.
It's particularly adept at looking at plan sets, because that's computer all over it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what we're kind of seeing. So we're hoping that accuracy will be a high level. Because I think at one point they were telling us we'll have 70% accuracy. I said, I'm not going to pay that money for 70% accuracy. I can pay an employee and have better accuracy than that. So, you want to have, that's what we're talking about, metrics and what we see as return. Because the worst thing you want to do is turn out a plan and tell somebody it's okay, and then turn around, oops, it's not okay. And that's going to cost the developers and people more money. Anyway, that's what we have. We can answer any questions, or if you guys want to give us any direction. Otherwise, that's it.
I'd just say a thank you, because obviously we're in a good spot because of leadership, and then also all the councils prior to us being conservative and making sure that we keep our city in a good standing. So kudos to you guys.
Well, one of the biggest things, and I think there have been councilmen during my tenure that have asked, why don't we borrow money and fix all our streets at once? I've never felt like borrowing money is a good idea, because that's what's gotten cities in trouble. They have bond debt, and you see that. You see them saying, our bond debt's coming due, our bond debt. Our city next door is talking about bond debt due. And that hurts you, because you buy into a payment plan like you do with a car or something like that. And, we've operated on a cash basis here, and we've been able to do it because the council has always lived within their means. So to the extent you do that, I think like at home, the more you borrow, the bigger problems you're going to have every month dealing with your your payments. So I think that's sort of what you guys have done. The most credit for the council since 1962 have adhered to that. And I think as long as we stay that course and keep a bank account or reserves, I think we're going to be in good shape.
Okay, any other question, council member? Otherwise, thank you for participating.
They want to, it's up to you if you want to have, it's fine. It's a public workshop, so yeah, they
Okay,
can.
go ahead.
So one question, 27 parts.
It's, my name's Chad Zimmerman. I live on Hanager Way. So I have stayed up with some of our budget stuff over the last, I've been on the Investment Advisory Council committee, and I just had a couple of things. One, the comment that Mayor Pro Tem Frackleton made about the way we display the budget, when you have here's our revenue, here's our expenses, and you see that number being larger than the other, that is something that I've seen previously, and it would be great just on that first page if it didn't show up looking unbalanced. It would be nice. I mean, I think it's a little scary to see that and then be like, all right, let's explain this, let's make sure, but it would be nice. The comments about the CalRecycle SB 1383, they do the compost, they also do mulch.
Yeah.
Could we offer mulch too?
We do.
I realize that Councilman Miles asked, is there any other way to spend that money? Which is a great, if there's $50,000, that's a lot.
We are looking at the mulch, and it is the question of where to get the mulch. So that's the other thing. So the county is charging a very high rate to get their mulch.
Okay.
So that's kind of an issue we have with the county.
Okay. And then Councilman Miles also mentioned about the SB2 funds being withheld. Is there anything else that's, other than the homeless shelter compensation, is there anything else that they withheld?
No, SB2, no, they threatened to hold road money, but that never came to fruition.
Okay.
So that was an issue down the road. Now, the SB2 money never comes directly to us. We're a small city, so we're the size of our city population. So the money goes to the county. But based on our request, the county gives the money toward our homeless shelter contribution. So, and that, every other small city is in the same boat. In other words, instead of paying general fund, we use that. But we've had to cover because there's been no SB2 coming from the state.
Makes sense. The big question I had was about the DG on the trail stuff. I know that this has been something that I've watched over the last several years. It came up years ago when I was on council, and I've noticed, in particular, Santiago got bad 2 years ago, and it has been 2 years, and it's gotten worse. There's a driveway between Westwood and Coral Tree that had like an inch gap. It's now 2 inches. and especially since we don't have streetlights, if you're out there in the mornings over the winter time, I know some very graceful, talented people who have tripped and damaged themselves, and it's dangerous, and that's been dangerous for years. So it seems like we maybe need to speed that up or see if there can be a more aggressive timeline on that.
That's why we put the 68,000. You see that.
I see that we have now, which is great, and I'd hate to see that happen, and I just want this to be something that's on people's minds, because it's not just that. If you look over further down Santiago as you get past Center, and you get towards Old Lamplighter, and there's a couple more driveways there, and there's huge rocks and stuff and then if you go up Lemon, if you're going up towards Robin Way and the hillside, there's huge holes and gaps and stuff in there. And really, if you took a bag of DG out there, I know we can't just do that, but I've seen a couple of construction areas where that would fix the problem pretty quickly, and we just haven't been keeping that up. And
The only problem is you put a bag in, next rainstorm is gone. So that's the unfortunate reality, is we can spend money. So we did just do some repairs on Santiago, where we had the temporary, tried to fix some of the things. So we do have money in here, we're going out to bid with it. And that's sort of one of the things we're
It's
trying
awesome.
to do.
I think it's spectacular, and I just want to say that it'd be great to keep that aggressively, not just right now, but for the future too, because it has been years of that getting worse and worse and worse, and it not getting it until all of a sudden it's great, we're doing it, but maybe we could have been doing it all along, kind of thing. Oh, and then on the AI stuff, so my note on this is that I've actually, so I work at a bank, and I had to write the whole AI policy for the bank, and we have implemented AI agents. So we do some additional, for vendor management, we'll go out and do a bunch of research on third-party risk management. And that the AI solutions on that are something that an intern could go do, and it's an additional $30 per month on your Microsoft license that you then train somebody, and they do, and they get to play around with it. There are low-cost, staff development solutions for that can get somebody on staff to do these things that is really, really advanced. And it's, I can talk to you more about what I've had to train people and where I've done that. There's some really great solutions that you could do in-house. So, those are my notes. Hey, everybody, good to see you.
Those are great notes. Steve, didn't you say that Santiago would probably have some DG repair before the 5K?
We did some, and
in
they're going to
May?
do some more right now.
So specifically that driveway between
I don't know
Westwood and
exactly
Coral
what
Tree?
streets we did it on, but I know they removed some rocks and they're out there, and you saw Sergio and Michael out there the other day, last week I think it was, and they had a compactor and everything they were doing, they were going up and down. So there were some streets they were doing, and we're doing
They're
more.
not done though, right? Because
Huh?
they're not done, because they didn't
No,
do anything
they're not
about the
done, they're
driveway.
not done, no, it's
Oh,
not done.
okay. Because I saw they picked up the small rocks and stuff, and they redid it, but then it's still, the gap's still
Right.
there. Okay.
I can tell you that our vendor that did the repairs up on Valley and also did the sidewalks over where we put in the new Valley, that has been very successful, and the polymer mixes are holding up in a big way.
Any other question from the audience? No? All right, then thank you for everyone participating tonight. I hope to see everyone on our next council meeting, Tuesday, April 28th at 6:30. Thank you. Have a good night.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they,